Hello, and thank you for joining us for this special edition of Close Up, the Manchester mayoral debate. We're joined by the candidates seeking to lead the Queen City for the next 2 years, incumbent Mayor Jay Rouet and school committee woman Jessica Spilders. Now, in this debate, candidates will get 60 seconds to answer each question. They may also get a 30-second rebuttal. Those will be granted at my discretion. If we do go to a lightning round, the candidates will have 30 seconds or less to answer. We've got a lot to get to in a short amount of time, so let's get to our first question that has to do with public safety and downtown homelessness. Those two issues fused together largely helped decide the last mayoral election. Committeewoman Spilders, you've said that you want to take a different approach from Mayor Rouet, and you've questioned the efficacy of the camping ordinance. Tell us, what would you do differently, and how would you make the situation better?
Well, thank you so much, Adam. Thank you for having us here today, and thank you, Jay, for being here as well. This is something that I certainly have some experience in as a social worker. I've worked in the city and walked alongside the people who are struggling, in particular those who are homeless. And clearing the encampments is just playing human whack-a-mole. We're just moving people from one part of the city to the other. We need to take a more comprehensive approach and ensure that the resources and supports like the Beach Street Engagement Center are available, not just for the people who are using them, who are homeless, but also for the nonprofits who provide the services there. And so I would like to see the city invest long-term, for now, in that center.
Mayor Rouet, in 2023, you promised a comprehensive approach to addressing homelessness and breaking the cycle of what we see on Manchester streets. Critics like Committeewoman Spilders argue that your policies have not fully addressed or solved the problem. What do you say to them?
Sure. First, thank you, Adam, for having us this morning. Thank you, Committee Member Spilders. I would start by saying that we have to ensure that our rules, that our laws, that our ordinances are being fully enforced. We cannot have encampments in the downtown. We cannot have encampments around the city. They are not safe for the individuals that are in them, and they are certainly not warm, welcoming, inviting for visitors, for businesses, for residents in the downtown. What I would say is that we have addressed this comprehensively. If you look at the numbers that we have released that are coming out of the Engagement Center, we have housed over 140 people between the Engagement Center work that we've done there, and also with our effort to effectively end veterans homelessness, which has housed over 70 veterans. We are a hair's breadth away from ending veterans homelessness in this city. Enforcement has to play a role in this. Addressing the underlying drivers has to play a role in this, like addiction and mental health. And then we have to bring in more housing on the back end to ensure that we are breaking that cycle fully, get people off the streets and into housing so that they can fully restructure their lives.
Quick follow-up. If the next aldermanic majority seeks to weaken or repeal the current camping ordinance, will you support or oppose that effort?
I would veto that effort.
And Committeewoman Spilders?
I'm sorry, can you repeat it, Adam?
If the next aldermanic majority seeks to repeal or weaken the current camping ordinance, would you support or oppose that effort?
I would support that.
Okay. Next question, and to Mayor Rouet. When it comes to housing, what is one thing the city needs to do more of and is doing well, and then what's one policy that's perhaps not working or underperforming that you want to change?
Well, the first thing that we need to do is over the last 2 years, we have been working diligently to get across the finish line our zoning rewrite. It's only the third of its kind in the history of the city of Manchester. We have to reduce the red tape. We have to reduce the bureaucracy. We have to be able to bring in more units into the city. It's a basic supply and demand issue. We have the hottest housing market in the United States of America, so we have great demand to live here, and we have very limited supply, so costs go up. So we need to bring more units into the city while always respecting and deferring to the character of our neighborhoods, making sure that people are having input as to what is going on in their community. So that process is now working its way through the aldermanic board right now, hopefully with a vote at the end of the year. The thing that I think we can continue to do more of is bring in and leverage our local, state, and federal partners to bring more dollars into it, because affordable housing is a very expensive thing to do. I think the Pearl Street lot is a perfect example. 127 units, and it cost over $50 million to do. So we have to make sure that we are leveraging our partnerships to bring in more funding.
Committeewoman Spilders, same question to you. What's one thing the city's doing well on housing, and then one thing you would like to change?
Well, thank you. You know, we have the hottest housing market, but I do want to say that, you know, there's some caveats to that. We have a less than 1% vacancy rate, and for those of us who bought housing in a time that was better, we're unable to move because now our houses, I could move, I could sell my house and make a killing, but I could not move anywhere in town. And so I am essentially priced out of Manchester's market as well. I do think that, you know, with the cuts that are coming down to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, we as a city need to take a little bit more control and ownership over this issue and ensure that our 79E process, in particular, those tax breaks for big developers, are being used effectively and with efficacy. And that's something that I would do as mayor is ensure that when people are building in the city, that it's going to benefit everybody in the city.
Along the same topic, you know, housing is not just a young people's problem. You know, how do you ease the tax burden on seniors and other fixed and low-income Queen City residents who are being priced out of homes that they own? Committeewoman Spillers, first to you.
This is certainly something that is close to my heart. My parents also live in this city, and I want to ensure that they can live here long term as well. And when it comes to being priced out of the city, that is, I think, for a lot of senior homeowners, the main concern with their taxes going up. And in Atlanta, they have created an affordable housing trust fund that essentially covers those differences in what the tax rates were for them and what they are being proposed to be, to cover that, so that those folks don't need to worry about that. They can live where they want to live and age in place if that's their desire. I'd like for Manchester to look into a similar project.
Mayor Rui, same question. How can you ease the tax burden on seniors and the low and fixed income
Sure.
folks?
So the two budgets that we have delivered since I became mayor have come further under the tax cap than any other previous tax cap budget, because we have to understand that the cost of living across the country has continued to increase and people need more of their hard-earned dollars in their pockets. So we're very judicious on this, making sure that the red line that we have as we're putting together our budgets is that we're not going to cut essential services. The other thing that we've done is through the age-friendly action plan that we just released, we put together a long-term plan to address affordability for seniors. And one of those is, as we are looking at housing going forward in the city, that we're making sure we're looking at senior housing as well. The Wilson Street School is coming online. That's something that we can look at for senior housing. Of course, the YDC property that's coming up, that's an area that we could potentially look at for senior housing as well. But it's protecting the tax cap. It's coming as far under the tax cap as we can without cutting any essential services. And it's looking at additional areas where we can continue to increase supply to lower costs, reduce the red tape and bureaucracy to development, and bring down costs in the city.
Next question. This presidential administration has been very active in the rescission or withholding of congressionally appropriated funds. Earlier this year, there was a freeze on federal grant funding that caused a big scramble. Mayor Rui, what's your plan if Manchester sees that kind of money frozen or withheld on a more extended basis?
Sure. So we work very closely with our department heads to come up with these kinds of contingency plans if and when funding were to be eliminated or reduced. We work closely with the governor's office as well. I was on the phone this week with the governor's office about potential changes, alterations, withholding of funding for SNAP and WIC due to the government shutdown. So these are things that at the mayoral level we think about and work on all the time. And we also work with our community partners on this. We do our community action plan with our nonprofits to address where are the deficiencies lying? What do you need going forward to ensure that we're able to continue delivering these services? We also work with the larger funding agencies in the state of New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, New Hampshire Catholic Charities, the Health Endowment, working with them to identify funding that exists, nonprofits that may need additional funding as well. So making sure that we are building in those contingency plans if and when dollars are reduced at the federal level.
Committeewoman Spillers, same question to you.
Thank you. Working in SNAP, this is something I'm pretty familiar with. This is something we're dealing with on a daily basis. And what do we do? What do we do in the future? You know, it's disheartening to me that we are arguing now amongst ourselves about basic needs, things like food, things like housing. Everybody deserves these. They're basic human rights. One thing that I would do is certainly I would continue to work with the governor, but I would also work with our federal delegation. They are the ones who are in Washington, in the weeds of this right now, and so I would work with them to see, you know, what resources they can help us access as a city, as well as, you know, we're leaving money on the table when we are not providing a tax cap compliant budget. These services could be funded better, and right now in the city we need to kind of just control our own destiny and access that so that we can move forward.
Okay.